Hello and welcome to another BI Consulting Services video. My name is Brad and today we'll be experimenting with a couple tools that use AI and natural language to produce DAX code for us. So let's get into it. The two tools we'll be working with are PowerBI's experimental quick measure suggestions and ChatGPT. Now, if you weren't aware, PowerBI in 2022 began featuring a preview version of this quick measure suggestion tool. Now, this is straight from an article on the Microsoft Learn portal. Quick measure suggestions assist creation of DAX measures using natural language instead of using templates or writing DAX from scratch. The article, which I'll post in the description, goes on to detail how you can enable this feature, some use cases, as well as some disclaimers. For example, quick measures are not a replacement for learning DAX, and you should always validate the suggestions. The other tool we'll be working with is ChatGPT, which I'll also link in the description. You can use the link to sign up for a free account and get access. Now, if you've somehow missed the news on ChatGPT, it's an AI chatbot developed by OpenAI and launched in November of 2022. Now, the implications and use cases of ChatGPT are way beyond the scope of this video. So we'll just be focusing on how it can be used to source DAX code suggestions from the internet. Now, some disclaimers here. ChatGPT is not perfect, so like QMS for Power BI, you'll be required to validate suggestions and do some testing yourself to ensure your DAX is functional. For our experiments, we'll be utilizing a Netflix dataset I found on Kaggle. So we've got about a dozen or so fields here with things like title, date added, release year, and we also have a description field right here. But there are a lot of characters in here that I didn't want to carry over into the work that we're going to do. So I just cleaned that up and stored all those descriptions in this description clean field, and that's what we'll use. I thought we might start out with a couple easy tests. So first, let's see how QMS handles something like giving us the total number of titles in our data set. Now, if we go up to Quick Measure, click on Suggestions, and let's open our table here so we can see what our fields are. And we're going to say count of Netflix titles. And we'll click Generate. Perfect. It looks like the preview value is 8,807. And I've actually done a little bit of work on the front end here just to verify and check what's actually in the table against what QMS and ChatGPT will provide to us. So for this one, all I did was do a count of titles that we have in our data set. And that came out to 8,807. And it looks like the DAX that QMS supplied is going to give us that correct value. So I'm going to click Add, and we will call this QMS number of titles. Perfect. And close this. And our KPI card here, we'll throw in the value. Perfect, 8,807. So that matches up. All right, let's go over to ChatGPT and see what we find there. If you haven't used ChatGPT up until this point, just a couple tips that I might include. So when we're asking it to help us with a specific language like DAX within Power BI, we want to make sure that we're including that in our prompt to the tool. So for example, I might say in Power BI, create DAX that will give us the count of titles in our title field. And let's see what ChatGPT will produce for us. So you see the entirety of the response to our prompt. So we have our DAX code right here, and then we have some helpful instructions down here that sort of walk us through how we can implement this into our dashboard. So title count will be the name of our measure, and we'll use the count function. We'll be calling the title field in our table. The instructions down here say to replace table with the name of the table that contains your title field, which for us is Netflix titles. This measure will count the number of non-blank values in the title column and return the result as a single number. Perfect, that sounds like it should work. If you're not familiar with creating measures in Power BI, you can pause the video and read through these instructions down here. But I'm going to go ahead and copy this out, and we'll go back over to our dashboard. Back here, we will go up to create a new measure, and I'm going to copy, paste in exactly what ChatGPT provided us. For this, we'll call it ChatGPT title count, and we'll replace table with Netflix titles title, and we'll delete that field that we don't need. Okay. All right, we've got our measure created here. So we'll click into our KPI card, pull in the new measure. Perfect, 8,807 titles. So it looks like both QMS and ChatGPT were able to provide us with correct answers. Nice. All right, another easy one here. Let's see if we can get the number of titles with a release year equal to 2020. Again, I've gone ahead and done a little bit of work here at the front end, just on the table. So we've pulled in our fields is the number of titles, and we've set our release year filter to be 2020. And that looks like we have 953 titles that fit that. So let's go back to our QMS tool, and we'll type in count of Netflix titles with release year equal to 2020. And we'll hit generate. Okay, the preview value looks like it's going to match up with the work we did prior. So let's click add. And we'll change this name. Titles 2020. All right. Let's close this. Go back to our KPI card, pull in the new metric. 953. That matches up. Let's go over to ChatGPT. In Power BI, create DAX that returns the count of titles with release year equal 2020. Our response here says, assuming you have a table called movies, which we can use, we'll just substitute our table name, with columns title and release year, you can create a measure in Power BI using DAX to return the count of titles with release year equal to 2020. So that's exactly what we have right here. And just at first glance, I think we're going to be able to make this work. So I will copy out the code, and we'll head back over to Power BI. All right, let's create new measure. Paste in our ChatGPT suggestion. All right, what do we need to modify here? So we'll change this table name to Netflix titles. Update this as well. And we're going with release year equal to 2020. Delete this out, we don't need it. All right, clicking into our KPI card, titles 2020, 953. So again, QMS and ChatGPT are able to give us correct answers. Nice. Let's try a tougher one here. What if we wanted to try to create a measure that produces a count of all titles with the word sport in the description? So I've gone ahead and done that already just with our table data. So in this KPI card here, I've put in a count of titles and then applied a filter to pull in only titles that contain the word sport in the description field. And it looks like we have 77 of those. So now if we go over to our QMS tool and we'll type in the request. And we'll hit generate. All right, looks like we've got a blank value here. And I think what's happening is that this DAX is trying to count the number of titles where the description is equal to the word sport and not necessarily just contains the word sport. So off recording, I did a little bit of research to see if I could put together a different function or modify this and actually get it to work. And I couldn't find the correct function that I needed. So I'm actually curious if anyone watching this video sees this DAX and can apply a change or two to it to get us the value that we're looking for. I think our request here is pretty straightforward. Count of titles with sport contained in description clean. We might modify it with, maybe we could say with the word sport anywhere in description clean. I don't know if that's going to work, but we can try and generate and see if we get a different response here. Yeah. So not able to suggest any measures. So it looks like, with just a try or two, QMS maybe isn't the best resource for this kind of question. But let's head over to ChatGPT and see what we can do there. We'll type in our prompt here. Use PowerBI DAX to count the number of titles that have the word sport anywhere in the description field. Okay, so at first glance here, it looks like one of the main differences between the DAX produced here by ChatGPT and QMS is that they're utilizing a search function, and I don't think QMS had that within their DAX. So I'm going to copy this out and paste it in our dashboard and see what we can produce. All right, we've got our new measure in here, and I will change the measure name. We'll adjust our tables, table references. We'll give that a go. Look at that. ChatGPT provided DAX that appears to be correct. It's at least got the same value as we have when we were just looking at the table level data. So it looks like, at least at first glance, ChatGPT tops QMS. All right, for our last example here, I've actually tried this a couple times without much success. So I'm curious if any of you are able to make this one work. I wanted to create a measure that returns a count of the word that most often appears in this description field. Now, I've used this word cloud visual that you can find by going over to Get More Visuals and searching for word cloud. I'm not super familiar with this visual, but it appears to have populated the most frequent words that appear in our description field. And if you hover over some of these words, you can see a count, and I do believe that corresponds to the number of times that that word or that letter is found in our description field. So we can kind of use this as a baseline, and it does appear that the letter A most often appears in our description field, and it looks like that was detected 4,744 times. So we'll use that as our baseline as we try and get QMS and ChatGPT to help us out here. So we'll go back to our QMS tool and try and come up with a prompt. All right, we'll try this. What do we have here? Wow. So it looks like it's returning one description. Let's add this and see what we have here. All right, it looks like it's throwing an error on the DAX that it provided itself. And I'm not going to dig too deep into this to try and resolve. I think what we want to illustrate here is that, depending on your prompt and the ask, QMS isn't always the best option. You might be able to dig into the suggested DAX and resolve it, but if you're unable to, then you might want to use ChatGPT as an alternative, which is what I will do right now. All right, let's try our prompt here. Wow, so we got quite the response on that one. Let's read through this a little bit. So create a new measure. Yes, enter the DAX to split the description field into individual words using the split function, and then count the occurrences of each word. Create a new measure to return the maximum count. Create a new measure to return the word with the highest count. All right, so I'm going to step away and see if I can get this to function in our dashboard. All right, so I've been at this for a little while and haven't really gotten the suggested DAX to work. Basically what I did was there were 3 different DAX sections that ChatGPT was recommending I use, sort of in order from 1, 2, 3. So I went through and created all 3 of those measures and adjusted the title reference and the field reference for each of those, just as it was illustrated in the ChatGPT return. So at least the response that ChatGPT gave us, if you went in and made your modifications to refer to the correct tables and fields, it doesn't look like those measures or those steps are going to produce what we're looking for here. So I'll go back and pull up each of the measures that ChatGPT suggested in case any of you want to take a stab at this kind of thing. So this was the first measure that ChatGPT suggested, this word count. And the second measure here, this max word count. And then the most frequent word. It looked like the first 2 measures were valid, but this one currently is not valid, saying multiple columns cannot be converted to a scalar value. So at least for this question that we're asking, it doesn't look like QMS, at least immediately, can provide a good measure for us to use. I wonder with ChatGPT if we dug in a little bit further or modified our prompt, if it might be able to provide us a measure, some DAX that we could actually use. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if you have any questions about this content or would like the Bix team to cover a topic in a future video, please leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on the latest from our channel, and thank you for watching.